but now you're leading things, you're managing things. What was your collaborative process with Paul Thomas Anderson?
Well, when I started working with Paul, he was a first time director,
Right.
and I was looking to get a directors under my belt, directors that would have to call me. We hit it off because, again, he's somebody who has a great knowledge of films.
He loves it.
And so we hit it off on that level. And he knows about clothes more now, but then he was all about the writing, and he knew the music, and he knew how to edit and things. But the clothes in those days, what is this, 27 years ago? He was leaving it up to me, and we talked. He had an idea. There were certain collars that he liked, or a film. We watched The Detective or something in a
Frank Sinatra.
You watch films with Paul in like the most fringy way, and you get a whiff of DNA off of it, but never get caught stealing anything.
Right. I mean, he's gone on TCM saying that he has TCM on 24/7.
They have a TV at his house that just has TCM.
Right, because he feels like it permeates him creatively, and I'm sure you're pretty much the same way. Yeah. So that segues me nicely into a conversation I want to have, and I've been asked to have with you on period costumes.
Right.
Because if I had $1 for every time someone reached out to me to talk to me about period costumes and how generally inaccurate they tend to be, at least in classic Hollywood. So if you think of something like 1934's Cleopatra with Travis Banton's costumes for Claudette Colbert, or 1963's Cleopatra costumes by Irene Sharav, they're less historically accurate and more either the designer's style voice and or the style of the era in which they premiered. You, my friend, are not that. You are a master of period costumes. And let me just tick off a little of his filmography for you. This is your life, Mark Bridges. Okay. So we have The Artist. We have your experience with the Coen Brothers movies. So the ones that I just mentioned, those are all period. Paul Thomas Anderson. We mentioned Boogie Nights. You won your second Oscar for Phantom Thread. We saw your acceptance speech. Yes, please pause for applause. There Will Be Blood. Most recently, Licorice Pizza. Then we go into Ted Demme's Blow, Stephen Shainberg's Fur, David O. Russell's The Fighter, which you might not think of as period, but it is. And then now out in theaters, we've got Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, which I know you're gonna win for. So the thing about you that makes you a master is that I do know that you've done research, and you also adhere to what costume designers are meant to do, which is to create the character and to support the story and to bring the director and or producer's vision to life. But you also, and I'll use a marketing term, you surprise and delight the audience with your costumes. They are a genuine pleasure to look at, but yet they do not take the audience out of the movie. You are still very much in it. They are not jarring. So, in a nutshell, how the hell do you accomplish that?
It's funny that we watched The Artist, because as I was sitting there, what I do when I watch old movies is like, what makes this 1927? What makes this be 1948? I try to see
Like as far
what,
as shoulders and
yeah,
collars
we did
and
a film called The Master with Paul that was 1950. We did Inherent Vice, which was 1970. You know, and you try to get to the juice of like what makes this that year. What is it about this? So, and then you try to zero in on the things that couldn't be 72, they couldn't be 67, it's really only 1970, or it's really, and you go either way. I usually go a little earlier, and that's where the original clothes come in, like going to, I love to go to the costume houses, whether it's Western or motion picture or American, wherever. I love going there, and just it's an archive there for me to walk in and touch and see fabrics and see shapes. And this, I don't get a good vibe off of this. You know, it's not that. It's just this isn't that Sally. You know, this isn't the character Sally, but this could be Sally. You know,
right.
And then that's a springboard for me, actually touching clothes. I have, whether it's fabric, clothes, whatever, that's how I do it. I looked at this film tonight, and you know, we had a very low budget for it. And I actually,
What was the budget?
it was a $10 million film, and we probably had like $250,000 for those costumes.
And there were a lot of costumes.
Well, there weren't that many because when you're doing black and white, you can reuse that yellow dress again and again. It's just on a different person. So you don't say like, there goes that yellow dress again. And so you just endless combinations of hats. But I look at it tonight and, you know, I think Michel changed the title cards. Like I might have had, I think he stretched out the story a little bit after we shot it, because there's a few things that I would do differently today. Minor, but you know, I strive for perfection. I'm like, oh, that boutonniere.
And we love you for it.
But I would probably have made a little more of a nod in the women's clothes to the early 30s. But you look at the old movies, you look at like they're having Marion Davies on right now. And, you know, and you look at the early 30s and it still feels very 20s. Because not everybody, it was the Depression, it's not everybody's up to speed. Hollywood dropped the hemlines, but even not then. You look at Barbara Stanwyck in Night Nurse or something, her nurse uniform is like right to her knees, and that's like, I don't know, 31, 32 or something.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, in Hollywood, they were still gonna show a little leg, they were still gonna have it.
Well, we're talking about pre-code. They're showing more than leg.
Waist, you know, more so than the style. But then also we had the budget constraints too. So I just kept endlessly using the same 20s clothes and
are you know, that you mentioned looking at vintage clothing and getting inspiration for it. Are you then creating every single piece? Are you ever buying vintage and putting it into a period production?
Or I do a lot of renting, a lot of hiring. Okay. Like the dress in the beginning that Missy Pyle wears at the premiere. That was a dress that I think Michelle at Motion Picture had in a box, and it had problems under the arms, but it felt like it was intact and it was good. And so, because I knew I was going to be in black and white, we did some repairs under the arms, and I added those lame tails and a piece of motif here, and I made a corsage, and it worked out really well. You know, Zappos T-strap shoes, you know. And there was a lot of Los Angeles street shopping in the artist, whether it's Los Angeles street leather coats, Santielli, rhinestone jewelry, that kind of thing. You know, the audience in the beginning, that was, a lot of it was tiling. We all know what the tiling is, where they keep moving the groups and then they photograph them and then put it all together. And then I had ABC Group and the C group was wearing like sequin dresses from Jet Rag, and stuff like that.
Rag.
So you learn after years of doing this what will fool the eye, what the camera will see. So that that's that. Something like Phantom Thread, I felt I didn't have all the money in the world, but they did know it was a fashion movie, so they gave me a decent budget, and
Right.
staffed me very well in London. And I really wasn't able to get many clothes from the States, but I knew I needed some things from here.
Right.
We made a lot of the clothes there. A lot of the clothes were made there, or there were existing clothes. Paul loves the patina of used clothes. That's why we make where we need to, but we try to use real when possible, because that's what my director likes.